Representative Jackson Lee of Texas, a senior member of the Judiciary Committee. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me to both.
Place your full testimony in the record, and if you'd be kind enough to summarize your written statement, we'd be appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me, on the record, thank the Chairwoman, Ms. Lowley, and certainly the ranking member, Mr. Rogers, and all of the staff. This is an important committee, as it has always been one of the major opportunities for America to interact with the world. So thank you for the leadership you've given. I'm going to start with the well-known issue of the day that does have an international impact, and that is the coronavirus. I am a member of the Homeland Security Committee. I spoke in my district in the beginning of February on this issue and concerns about whether this nation was prepared. We have seen now, obviously, a soldier that has been out of the country who's been diagnosed. We see another individual in the country diagnosed. But my concern is, as it relates to the international arena, is the infrastructure in some of our developing nations, and in particular the continent of Africa. I, for a long time, advocated building an infrastructure of hospitals in Africa. And so I'm just generally going to speak to the question of how imperative it is now that our allies and partners in the developing world have diagnostic equipment, medical supplies, doctors, workers, hospitals, and any other additional resources as they might begin to address the coronavirus. I know that there is the World Health Organization, but in my interaction on the continent, one of the things most noticeable in Africa, in the countries in Africa, is their lack of a viable hospital system. I would hope that in the appropriations process, we might consider seeding that as we look to the amount of money that is coming from another committee, but overlapping in this committee, dealing with the coronavirus. Let me also indicate my support, $70 billion for the international affairs budget, and I will summarize, that really reinforces the three-pronged approach to diplomacy, to fight terrorism, supporting our allies, build new markets for U.S. goods and services, combat pandemics, and provide life-saving humanitarian assistance. And I think the international affairs budget, just 1% of the total federal budget, but the programs it funds are very important and very strategic. $3.3 billion for international security for Israel. I think it speaks for itself, and I've always been supportive of stabilizing the region. I continue to support a two-state solution, but I believe the security assistance is crucial. And I support the $110 million for the emergency refugee and migration assistance. I take issue and would look for the bar that the administration has put on many states, or suggesting that they not take refugees. Let me be very clear that Texas has taken refugees for as long as I've known. I've chaired a nonprofit organization called Interfaith Ministries, where one of our key components was providing for refugees and helping them to adjust to U.S. life. I support the $875 million for child survival and maternal health. That's one of the key elements that even was prominent during the fight against HIV in developing nations, is maternal to child transfer, and these are important elements. Support the $450 million for long-term drinking funding, as well as human trafficking dollars, $265 million, monies for the Caribbean, monies in particular for Peace Corps. I think that's one of the major components of our face to the world. And let me indicate my support for several programs that I have seen in action when I've traveled overseas. One, the Charles R. Rangel International Affairs Program, that I was here when it was created and named after Congressman Charlie Rangel. The general support, the USAID Donald M. Payne Fellowship. And I've seen these recipients in our embassies around the world. $40 million for the U.S. Institute of Peace. And I support the Cultural Exchange Program. Again, I've seen that at work, $640 million for educational and cultural diversity. I support the continuation for funding for HIV/AIDS, $4.88 billion, and I'm supporting the preservation of wildlife, $85 million, combating wildlife trafficking, programs, hopefully in tribute to Cecil, the lion who lost his life. I just want to conclude my remarks by saying, having the privilege of being part of the Helsinki Commission, the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, looking at issues of development and human rights and the rule of law, I believe that our foreign assistance is key to our position on democracy, the rule of law, and engagement with allies, where we develop more friends through engagement than we do through the acts of war. And I thank you for listening to me today.
Well, thank you very much.